freedom, loud guns, hot women, fast cars. How do you screw up selling that? Well, he managed to catch the essence of modern conservatism in 2 sentences. There's only one basic human right, he wrote, the right to do as you damn well please. And with it comes the only basic human duty, the duty to take the consequences. Now, the same astute, brilliant, insightful political mind that wrote that sentence also wrote, cleanliness becomes more important when godliness is unlikely. And I am talking, of course, about P.J. O'Rourke, who died about a week ago, and we just now had a chance to talk about him. Guys, I simply wouldn't be here without him. There's no question about that. I'll talk about that towards the end. Steve, the essence of P.J. O'Rourke's appeal to me as a young man just coming out of college and waking up to the fact that the things that I had passionately believed in, I knew nothing about. The thing that appealed to me was not just his sense of humor, although that was certainly it. P.J. O'Rourke was the first person to make conservatives cool on merit. In other words, what he basically said was, we're not the weenies that are trying to control everybody. We're not the weenies that are telling you need to wear a helmet and a wetsuit in the shower in case you hurt yourself. We're not those people. We're the people that believe in the cool stuff. As a matter of fact, I have a quote here, and I have often said personally that how hard is it for us? We believe in fast cars, loud guns, and hot women. And it wasn't until I reread this quote just exactly how much of this I stole from PJ, not even being aware of it. In Republican Party Reptile, he says, we're in favor of guns, drugs, fast cars, free love, if our wives don't find out, a sound dollar, and a strong military with spiffy uniforms. There are thousands of people in America who feel this way, especially after 3 or 4 drinks. If all of us would unite and work together, we could give this country, well, a real bad hangover. This kind of language coming from a conservative and from a Republican blew my mind, and it still blows my mind. And the reason I picked that quote for you, Steve, is that Vodka Pundit is essentially the same. It's the same kind of approach to this, right?
It wouldn't exist without PJ.
You the martini and that James Bond kind of a silhouette kind of thing. Why is it that until P.J. O'Rourke came along, we just allowed them to make us into the weenies and the squares when certainly for 30 years now it's been the other way around?
Because Andrew Breitbart hadn't come along yet to tell us that politics is downstream of culture, and we'd given up on the culture a long time ago. That's what I'm afraid it comes down to. And we still haven't fully woken up to this fact, even though Andrew told us, 15 years ago? I think it's been 12 years ago.
By the way, parenthetically, he died almost 10 years ago to the day. It was February 29th of 2012.
Yeah. Terrible day. P.J. O'Rourke, even before he came out of the closet as a conservative, he was always funny. He wrote his Guide to Modern Manners, I think it was called, in the early 80s. There was a bit in there about cocaine etiquette, back when cocaine was still, the nightclub drug of choice. And he gave an example of how to have good cocaine etiquette, which was, I need to go to the bathroom now, and so does Ted and Mary and Jen, but Bill doesn't. Just brilliant, on point stuff. And the thing about PG's humor is it didn't always have to be political, but it almost always had a point. Sometimes he could do stuff that was just silly and made you guffaw out loud. In fact, my favorite example of that, when he was writing for Rolling Stone in the 80s and 90s, they sent him all over the world. And he went to Sweden to figure out why socialism seemed to work so much better there. And it was talking with, I think, the Swedish Minister for Sport, which is something we'd never have in this country. And I don't think. And he asked them, why you've got all this massive social welfare state. Why aren't people lazy and taking advantage of it? It was like February in Sweden. And the minister just sort of shrugs his head towards the window where there's 18 feet of snow on the ground, as if to indicate the lazy ones are all dead. They've been breeded out generations and generations ago. And so PJ first starts with this very smart point, but then he gets into the silliness that just killed me. He was picturing a scene on a Viking longboat, back in the 11 or 1200s, returning from pillaging England. And the captain of the crew is doing the tallying, and he says, well, according to my figures, Nils got 8 rapes, but Sven only got 1, so everybody gets to rape Nils. And that, in a nutshell, is a sort of Swedish egalitarianism. And again, that make you laugh out loud, but still driving home a point. I'm not nearly as funny as PJ was, but again, if it hadn't been for him, I don't know if any of the three of us would be doing this, not just today, but for the last 20 years it's been.
Scott, you started with Scrapple Face. It's how we got to know you. You're writing satire and political humor and doing a really, really good job of it. I think probably the most famous thing single quote that P.J. O'Rourke ever had, to me, encapsulates the genius of the man, because it is extremely clever and funny, and it's also very, very true. It carries a lot of information. It's a simple sentence. He said, if you think healthcare is expensive now, just wait till you see what it costs when it's free.
Yeah. The impact that you can have doing something that doesn't at first seem to be overtly political is greater than any impact that you can have when you're trying to exercise your political muscles in public. When in our backstage show, we talked about the fact that there were only 2 magazines that I bought every issue of when I was in college: National Lampoon and Rolling Stone. And it wasn't because I wanted to get a dose of politics. I was not picking up National Review magazine or whatever the equivalent would be on the left, which I guess is every other magazine. I was getting one magazine because it made me laugh, and another magazine because it was about rock and roll. These were the things I cared about when I was young and impressionable, and any kind of influence that they had was done on me without my knowledge. And the reason that is so powerful is because very few people are going out there and saying, hey, what can I read about the latest issues of the day? At least very few people under the age of 55 are doing that. But if you can connect with somebody and make them laugh, if you can connect with somebody and get them excited about a new band that's just come out or a new album that's just been released by your favorite band, and if you can give them that kind of entertainment, that's how I came in touch with Hunter S. Thompson and read every book that Hunter S. Thompson ever wrote. That's how I was connected with Kurt Vonnegut and read everything that Kurt Vonnegut had that I could get my hands on at the time. And so the lesson, I think, in a life that was lived so richly like P.J. O'Rourke's is that you primarily should set out to engage and delight people, that you should set out to entertain people, that you should set out to find a way to catch their interest and to keep them entertained and to keep them laughing. And they'll get the message. I mean, you got the message of P.J. O'Rourke. And in fact, I'm sure I did too, but I was not aware at the time. Like, I never looked at the bylines of who was writing these articles in National Lampoon or Rolling Stone. I was just reading them and loving what I was reading and keeping a stack in my closet, ever growing taller, alongside of the empty boxes of Pop-Tarts in my closet in my fraternity room. So if you're a conservative right now and you're thinking, gee, how can I have an influence on the culture? It would be better if you were a humorist. It would be better if you were an artist. It would be better if you were somebody who reviews movies and doesn't try to beat everybody about the head and shoulders with your politics, but just connects with them at an intimate level where they are most vulnerable to your influence, and you can have an influence like P.J. O'Rourke did. I'm sure that my transition from Mad Magazine to the essays of James Thurber, which I discovered long after he was dead, to National Lampoon, to Saturday Night Live, to, eventually each step, to eventually Rush Limbaugh, who connected with me through humor, eventually led to me writing a satire website of my own and 3 or 4 books. So that, to me, is a more effective path, and we are blessed to have had P.J. O'Rourke walk that path for us.
Yeah, it was almost exactly a year to the day after Rush Limbaugh died, and Rush Limbaugh was a sledgehammer. He was simply a sledgehammer that would take a subject and atomize it. Reflecting on P.J. O'Rourke, I think the best way I think of him is that I think he was a matador. When the left came at him like a charging bull, he didn't just stand there in front of it and try and stop it. He would just step to the side, wave his cape, and let it go by and revel in the glory. And what I mean by that is he would take the insult and spin it around. My second favorite P.J. O'Rourke quote of all time was, paraphrasing, but he basically once said, liberals are often calling conservative Nazis. And that doesn't really bother me too much, because at no point in human history has a woman ever had a fantasy about being ravaged by a guy dressed up as a liberal. And I thought that is absolutely magic. That's P.J. O'Rourke in a nutshell. For those of you who are not familiar with him, I can recommend a few things. The National Lampoon 1964 high school yearbook parody was written by P.J. O'Rourke, and it's absolutely brilliant. His book, Republican Party Reptile, which I did a quote from earlier, was a result of him showing up, having been basically a bomb-throwing radical, showed up at a Republican Party convention, and they said, "No, you can't come in. You're a reptile. Republican Party reptile. I'm in." He did a book called Holidays in Hell, which is excellent. For those of you that think that America sucks and point out all the things about America that suck, you're probably right. But if you read Holidays in Hell, you realize that America at its suckiest is better than any place else at its best. And that's a perspective that I never forgot. He wrote a book called Give War a Chance, which he subtitled as Eyewitness Accounts of Mankind's Struggle Against Tyranny, Injustice, and Alcohol-Free Beer. There it is again. That little sidestep, that little twirl of the cape. But 2 books I cannot recommend highly enough. One of them is called Eat the Rich. It's the best book on economics that I have ever read in my life. It's one of the best books I've ever read in my life. It absolutely shows you what the consequences of economic policies are. The description is as chapters include good capitalism, United States, bad capitalism, Albania, good socialism, Sweden, bad socialism, Cuba. And then, of course, he's got things like how to make everything out of nothing in Hong Kong and how to make nothing out of everything in Tanzania. It is an astonishing collection of how the culture determines the outcome. But I think probably his best book, at least my favorite book, was called Parliament of Whores. And I'm going to give you a spoiler alert here, because
the last line,
the last line of Parliament of Whores is a knockout punch. After exploring the federal government and all of its people who worked hard and nevertheless all of its inefficiencies, and going looking for this monstrous government, he ends the book by talking about being in a very, very local little town hall meeting, grassroots democracy, where something important needed to be done, and everybody knew that it was important, and everybody knew that it needed to be done, and nobody wanted to pay for it, and nobody wanted it in his backyard. And P.J. O'Rourke said, "I realize now that in a parliament of whores, the whores are us. We're the whores. They are our elected representatives. We send them there." That kind of humility is astonishing. I wouldn't be here without him. There's no question about it. Anything that you've ever seen me do that you might have admired would have been impossible without P.J. O'Rourke. So let me tell you about my favorite quote from P.J. O'Rourke. And again, this is from memory and somewhat distant memory. He was writing about the fact that when he was young, he was a draft dodger and did everything he could to get out of going to Vietnam. And he did get out of going to Vietnam. And at some point during his radical hippie career, he was at the airport welcoming soldiers coming back and spitting on him and stuff. And one of those soldiers punched him in the face. And P.J. O'Rourke said, at some point, somebody had to go to Vietnam because I didn't. And what I would like to say is that to the guy who punched me, if you had, I wish it was you. I hope it was you. In other words, the guy that punched him, he wishes that the guy who had gone in his place was the one that had come and punched him in the face. I've completely mangled the quote, but you get the idea, right? That self-awareness, that ability to say, I was wrong. I was not only so wrong that the person I sent to Vietnam because I didn't go, I wish to God that he was the one who punched me in the face because I deserved it. He's my North Star. Everything I do and everything I believe in is a result of his exact attitude. And again, that is freedom, loud guns, hot women, fast cars. How do you screw up selling that? He didn't. And I'm trying real hard not to. For Steve Green and Scott Ott, I'm Bill Whittle. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll see you next time here on Right Angle. And have a good flight, PJ.